said there is to separate your wants from your needs. That sometimes is where we have to start first. All right, we have another one here. This says house versus renting, but I think the person is asking, like owning your house versus renting. Could you comment on that?
Yeah. So it's difficult to comment on that without in a vacuum. What I would say is that it is the Barbadian dream, and we are told this from time we were so small. You just buy a house, buy a piece of land, and build a house, etc.,
Piece of
etc.
the rock.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that. However, I'm going to make a little bit of a controversial statement here. I think that we spend too much, we extend too much in that area, so that we find ourselves in a situation where our house investment is so significant that if there's some type of shift in, we lose a job or we lose some of our income, as some of us have seen in this pandemic, where we weren't necessarily laid off, but we didn't see the same level of income that we were accustomed to, then you find yourself in a bit of trouble. And as I said before, and I just bring back the example here, if you had a loan, $100,000 loan, say a 5% loan for 25 years, your monthly payment is about $584. So the interest that you would pay over that period is about $75,000, right? Over the 25-year period. After 5 years, you have only paid off 9,000 of that principal, and the rest of it, the other $20,000 was only interest. So I say that to say that we really should keep our house costs low. But the question really was coming back to that was how should we rent, or should we? I think you should rent until you're able at the full cost associated with a house, with managing a house. And as I said before, it's the mortgage payment, it's the land tax, it's the insurance, both for the contents and the property, and any other thing that could happen to the property during that period, which could be any type of maintenance that could come about. The thing is with renting is that if you are renting a property that's $1,000, if something goes wrong with your plumbing, you can call your landlord. If something goes wrong with the electricity, you can call. But when it's your house, you have to pay for it. You have to do the landscaping. You have to pretty much have to keep that property in good condition, which might require painting every 5 years. It might require pest control, or you may not have a house after a point. So there are lots of costs that are associated with owning a house. So the comparison, I would have to see the comparison of the two, the numbers associated with that comparison, as opposed to being, overall just saying, should you rent or should you buy a house?
So I guess that's a discussion that really perhaps depends on the person's circumstances as they make that kind of decision.
Exactly.
So here's another one. How often should one check their credit score? And in parentheses, we have CCB limited.
So last time I talked about us not having I should say in Barbados, some other islands do have it. We do not necessarily have a formal credit bureau, but there is a plan to get one. I think that it is difficult to say check your credit score, because unlike the US, where you can go on a website and you can plug in information and get it, it is not that formal here in Barbados. What will happen, and unfortunately sometimes the bank will decline you for a loan or for a certain size loan, and you will not necessarily know why. But there may be some attendant issues there which could relate to not paying bills on time, not paying bills in full, and that sort of stuff. So it is difficult to go to one place and say, well, what's my credit rating? But I can tell you that you will, if you do not have good credit, you will probably pay a higher interest rate than your colleague who is in a better situation.
Okay, we have a comment here where Diol is contributing. Car loans are bad debts because depreciation yearly and maintenance. Because of that, that's what contributes to making them bad debt. So there's only expenses associated with them. Only if it will help you bring in income to offset the cost, only then should it be considered an asset. So thank you very much for that contribution.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we have someone saying, I've had the experience of credit card limits being automatically increased on occasion And then when applying for a mortgage, was told about a high debt ratio, even though the balances on the credit cards are very low. This is someone who was supporting your comment about the fact that the credit card limit is really used. It represents debt as they're calculating what you owe versus what you own.
Correct. And it is amazing how many clients are not aware of that is included. The full limit amount, so say, is included in their calculation of your debt ratio. If you have a high limit because it was given to you, I had a very high limit that was given to me. Actually, I still have it, believe it or not. But anyway, you have to be mindful that it will be used in a sense against you in calculating your debt ratio.
Yeah. And you really don't know about these things until you go to the bank and they're doing it and then they tell you.
Sometimes
All
they
right.
don't tell you. That's the thing. Sometimes they don't tell you because you'll be wondering, why is my debt ratio so high? But you know what? 2 years ago, the bank increased my limit to $10,000, and I didn't do anything about it. And all of a sudden, even though I only owe $1,000 on it, the bank is assuming that I could possibly use up that full limit, and so they use it in their calculation.
There's another contribution here. This is from Ronald. Owning a house is not for everyone, in my opinion, especially if you don't plan on having children. Many people retire and they still end up paying a mortgage even after retirement. So you kind of have to make the decision on whether or not you want to own the house or you want to rent. And then we have another question here. Does it make sense to cancel a credit card if you do not use it?
Yes. As I think that unlike the US, where they really track or they assume that you're closing out a credit card is a negative and that will affect your score, in Barbados, that doesn't happen. I think if you're not using the credit card and you don't need it, cancel it.
Very good questions and very good discussions. Now, the very
Yeah.
first question that was asked this afternoon, which might be some indication of what a lot of people are interested in, was what should you be investing in 2021? So I don't know if there's any response you have for that right now.
Uh, well, they're not. You know what? A lot has to do with your knowledge base. If you are very savvy and understanding markets, you're following CNBC and Bloomberg and these things, and you understand, you can go into the market and you can buy individual stocks. Okay, there are a number of stocks there that are doing very well. I mean, the market is a bit toppy, but the reality is that the opportunities are there. Now, I would say though that if you are not that savvy, you don't know what's going on in the market. And I should make a distinction between the local market and the international market, because if you're in the local market, the opportunities are fairly limited, but I would recommend that you do mutual funds. Is very straightforward and very simple. There are not many opportunities to purchase stocks on the local exchange, but you can buy in Trinidad or Jamaica. The fact of the matter is that since the 2008 financial crisis, there's been a secular decline in interest rates. So returns on fixed income, which is like bonds or term deposits and so on, is like almost zero. And as I said before, since the central bank removed the minimum savings rate in 2015 from 2.5%, it has dropped almost to zero, literally zero. In most cases, because if you consider the 0.01 that you may auspiciously earn, but in fact you are paying withholding tax of 15% on whatever that interest is, and you're paying bank fees, you really, if you consider the inflation rate is about 7%, then you are really in a negative position. So my advice, unless you want to buy some boss bonds, which are paying about a 5% return, the thing is the act that is associated with the issuance of that bond will prevent government from ever defaulting. So I would say if you want a little piece of fixed income, then you can buy that. But there on the local scene, there really is very little that you can do apart from, as I said, buy mutual funds or maybe buying some bonds in Trinidad or Jamaica. Now, on the international side, if you're really thinking a little broader, everybody has seen the performance of the various stock markets. They're doing very, very well. As I said, if you are an individual who follows the markets and you understand the markets, then maybe you can go buy individual stocks and you know to short and do all these things. If not, buy ETFs, exchange traded funds. Make it very simple. It gives you the exposure to a range of equities. It can give you exposure to cryptocurrencies, to, in some cases, some other types of asset classes, commodities, alternative investments, etc. etc. So there could be a range of types of ETFs, and that's to me the simplest way. Or you can buy mutual funds again, Vanguard and those types that are performed creditably over time. If you're a little bit more adventurous and you understand the cryptocurrency market, and I want to announce here that probably very soon I'm going to start a learning series on cryptocurrency and how to trade cryptocurrency. If you are adventurous and you want to try it, just using Bitcoin as an example, but which is the leader in that area. Bitcoin has dropped from $64,000 down to about $34,000 after Elon Musk made a statement that he made about the negative impact of mining and so on. The situation is that has been a game changer for a lot of people. I remember when Bitcoin was $5,000 and it went to $64,000. I am thinking to myself, if I had even just had a little bit of courage, I would have been pretty rich. I might still be talking to you, but I would have some pretty stuffed pockets. but the truth is that if you don't understand it and you don't want to spend your time understanding it, it is a little challenging to understand. We're talking about ledgers and distributed this but I think that there's an opportunity here. I think that it is possibly going to go to $100,000. That's what, from my reading of it and the uses and so on, I think it's going to go farther. Recently, China had an impact too because they're limiting the use of Bitcoin and the cryptos in favor of a digital currency. But the truth of the matter is that I think there's no stopping it. It is going to probably go to $100,000. When? We don't know. The market is so wide and varied. You can focus on a particular industry, you can focus on a particular geographical area. So there's so many things that can go into, but it has to do with your risk tolerance. And if you have a high risk tolerance, then there's a possibility that you can be wide open to having a mix of individual stocks, a mix of ETFs and mutual funds in your portfolio. And that is, as I said, that's on the international side.
Thank you. So that was a good response to that question to tide over those who are curious about building their portfolio and investing. And there was somebody who was absolutely supporting your comment about cryptocurrency going to 100,000. Now we have another question here on another topic. Is a line of credit better to provide funds rather than owning a credit card?
It could be. In some cases, the cost of the line of credit really could be a negotiated one. So, whereas with credit cards, the rate is pretty much set. So you can go into the financial institution. It doesn't have to be a bank, and you can negotiate the rate that you will want to pay on the line of credit. But the principle of the two is the same. It's a revolving credit. Mm-hmm.
And we have a comment here, someone who's seeking clarity. I was declined a loan based on a debt incurred by a previous employer on an account where I was listed as a contact, although the account was in the name of the organization. How was that done?
That's a very good question. So they were declined for loan because they were co-owner of that bank account.
They were listed as a contact on the account.
As a contact. That's strange. And they were not a signatory? I'm not sure why you would be considered.
If the person were a signatory, that could have had an impact?
Yes, because you would be considered or if you were considered to be a beneficiary of the account. If you're a beneficiary or a signatory on that account, it means that you can exhibit some sort of control over the movement of those funds.
The clarification here is I was not aware of the debt and the loan application was made 14 years after the arrears were incurred. And no, I was not a signatory.
You were not a signatory. I'm a little surprised as just a contact person that you would have been held liable. You were not either a beneficiary or a signatory. So I'm not sure why you should really go into the bank and have a discussion with them. I don't see how that individual could be responsible. I have to go into the bank and have a discussion with them, because to me, unless you were a signatory, which means that you went there and actually put your signature so that you can actually make decisions on that account, or you are a beneficiary of the account, I don't see how you could be liable. I'm not sure I understand the full details of that.
All right, so that might merit perhaps a call. Maybe contact Marcia. You can reach out to her
Yeah,
on LinkedIn, or you can get in touch with her at her business, Prosperity Financial, and you can carry on that conversation just to get a little deeper clarity with regards to that, how something like that could happen, and perhaps what you could do to ensure it doesn't happen in the future, or even check into
yeah,
that one to see if there's anything you could get changed about that situation. Now we have a question here,
correct.
big
Mhm.
question mark after it. And then somebody's asking if we can organize a session on investing. So you did ask at the beginning for an indication of topics that they would like for the next one. So we have, can a session be organized on investing?
Yes, definitely. This is definitely a session that I want to have. Having been a bond trader for several years, and really try to share a lot of insights into the instruments and what's trending now, and what's expected in the future in NFTs and that sort of stuff. So definitely do plan to have a session on investing. As I said, in particular, I want to have something on cryptocurrencies as well. Now, the question of index funds, yes, that's another opportunity. I forgot to mention that index funds are definitely another avenue that you can look at for investing purposes as well.
Thank you very much. And the situation with the loan, the person has gone on to explain that the account was transferred to my name and I was forced to clear the amount in order to be granted the loan. So it is interesting, I guess, for you to find out a little bit more about that to see if that is perhaps some kind of warning that maybe we all would want to consider as we go forward, perhaps depending on employers and how they represent your involvement with an account and so on. So,
Mhm.
yeah, we have someone here saying that it would be interesting to hear your views on reverse mortgages. You have any
On
comment
reverse
on reverse
mortgages.
mortgages now? Yeah, when
Yeah,
you're borrowing against the equity in your house.
actually, it's not a borrowing really. In the true sense of the word, it's like delivering the equity earlier than before you pass away. The unfortunate thing is that the Caribbean, we never collaborate. We really need a bigger market to have this type of facility being offered. I think it can work because there's so many of individuals out there who have reached a certain age, and maybe they're getting on in age, and they're have medical issues, and but they have a pretty nice property. But as you know, it takes a pretty long time to sell a property in Barbados, and having to maintain that property and it is can be fairly challenging on someone who's on a fixed income. So I think it would be something that that should be looked at. I think there was some proposal place on that, but I don't remember the details of it. So I'll have to do a little bit more research, but I think it's something that we should look at because there's so many people that are individuals who are living pension check to pension check, but they live in a nice property, and it's a little tough to not be able to release some of that equity out of your house.
All right. So thank you very much. We had some very diverse questions and we had some very good questions coming from our participants. We've
Mhm.
had a question as well, when will the next session be? Our intention is to do these once per month. We were trying to be a little ambitious and saying we were going to do them every 2 weeks, but we realized in terms of turnaround time with planning and other commitments that our expert has, that it is better if we plan for once per month. So the next one is going to be in July. Keep watch for the space. We have your email address. We will send you information for when the next session will be coming so that you can decide if you can join us. And we will make the recording available on Facebook. Marcia is putting it up. She's creating a page specifically with the title of the series, and um, she will be putting the recording up there and sending out a note to let you know when it is available so that you can download it. You can go through it again if you wish. So, as we wrap up this evening, are there any closing comments you'd like to leave our participants with, Marcia?
Yeah, I just like to thank them very much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time. I think that we as Barbadians and Caribbean people, we really need to dig our heads out of the sand and lift up and really start to create wealth, become aware of the financial environment that we're in, and really use it to our advantage. Stop quarreling about others and what they do and not do and so on. And we have to get the knowledge and really use it to build wealth. Do not put all your eggs in one basket and then expect that the basket will fill up somehow. But I really appreciate you joining us, and I hope that you learned something from this session. Thank you.
All right. And you can reach out to both of us. You can keep in touch with us on LinkedIn. You can follow my page on LinkedIn, Breakthrough Performance Coaching, so that you will have information for when future sessions will be coming. You can get in touch with Marcia to ask her any questions or any follow up that you want. She also provides individual consultations. If that is something that you want to do, you can reach out to her to do that as well. Thank you very much. I add my voice to hers. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session in Dollars and Cents in the Caribbean.